This story is entitled The Day I Died. I don't know what it is about me, but for some reason, I seem to be the Walter Mitty of near-death experiences. When it comes to death and destruction, emergencies and disasters, for some reason, I've become a cosmic crap magnet. As far as NDEs, near-death experiences, me and several of my friends used to go whitewater rafting 8 to 10 times a year on a regular basis. Sometimes we would tube, sometimes we would canoe, and sometimes we'd get a 4 to 12 man raft and make a party of it. Well, one day, after riding the kiddie portion of the river, we came to the Whitewater Rapids. We stopped at the security station and got our life jackets. And it's posted everywhere. Only experienced rafters beyond this point. Skull and crossbones hanging on cables all over for warnings. We knew. We got our life jackets, and like I said, we were partying. We had 12-man rafts, several of them, and we put back in the water in our rafts. Came around the corner, and before we could even get our jackets on, which we should have done, the waters were raging to the point where we were laughing and talking in our rafts, and it realized we couldn't even hear each other. We were like 2 feet away from each other. The roar of the crashing waters was so deafening, and we were being tossed around in the raft like dice in a cup. The raft I was in started spinning, and it hit a rock. I was thrown from the raft and bounced off the rock into the waters. Little did I know, there was a split around the rock. One side was the rapids, and the other side was a waterfall. I bounced off the rock and was thrown off the side with the waterfall. The spin of my bounce had me backwards, so my feet were in front of me, and I was looking up at the waterfall as I fell. I plunged into the icy waters, commonly just above freezing. As I landed in the water, I became helpless to the raging current. My body was being churned at the base of the waterfall like a sock in a washing machine. As I spun in the current, I became disoriented. I couldn't tell which way was up. Just then, I felt the riverbed under my feet. The current was pushing me up against the rock slab. As I lay spread eagle, face first against the rock, I noticed that it ran backwards at a 45-degree angle towards the water's surface. I began to scale the rock while being pressed against its razor-sharp surface by the current. I remember thinking at one point the pain was so unbearable, I was going to just breathe in and get it over with. But something gave me the strength to keep fighting. I finally reached the surface and took a breath from what seemed to be an eternity. I was still pressed up against the rock, my body being shaped like a boomerang, half in and half out of the water, my legs and lower torso still submerged. With one final surge of strength, I pushed myself away from the rock and threw myself into the raging current. Immediately, I realized the current was much stronger at the surface, and it dragged me like a rag doll through the rocks. As the current finally subsided, I found myself near the shore, with my body beaten, cut, battered, and broken. I pulled myself onto the shore and laid back in the grass. I looked up at the sky. Everything started to spin, and I experienced what I can only assume was vertigo. I started to get dizzy and became nauseous and began to vomit uncontrollably. My muscles started to seize up, and I expelled what seemed to be a steamship tanker full of water from my lungs. I laid there for about another 30 minutes or so, then made my way back into the river to rinse myself off. As I turned and looked back against the current, I could see the waterfall I was thrown from in the distance, and I remember thinking, "You didn't get me."